Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are looking at a fundamental shift happening literally right beneath our feet. We're talking about a macro problem that is completely reshaping the modern socioeconomic landscape. It's a phenomenon researchers and sociologists are calling the game reset. We are living in an era where the old rules of the traditional social contract are being aggressively rewritten by failing bureaucratic states, and it's pushing us rapidly into an age of digital coercion. But, and here is the exciting part, we're also going to look at exactly how high-agency individuals are learning to navigate and totally escape this system.
Okay, let's dive into this. For decades, the societal promise was pretty simple. Work hard, follow the rules, and boom, you achieve property, status, and stability, the whole package. But what happens when that traditional social contract just completely breaks down? Well, based on the models we're analyzing today, massive demographic imbalances and staggering public debt have fundamentally shattered that promise. We're seeing systems where centralized authorities are acting way less like protectors and honestly, more like energy extractors. They're basically shifting resources around to maintain the status quo of an older, asset-holding generation while entirely blocking the societal advancement of the younger generation.
So that brings us to a really fascinating sociological and game theory model known as the game reset. By definition, a game reset is this ultimate systemic point of collapse and reinvention. It happens when old bureaucratic structures get so heavy, so bogged down in debt, and so incredibly rigid that they just fail to adapt to physical and economic realities. During this phase, centralized authorities are seriously struggling to maintain control through the usual channels. Instead of innovating, the system prioritizes its own survival, establishing new, often super restrictive rules just out of absolute necessity. It's essentially that awkward transition period where the old game is ending and the new rules haven't exactly been written yet.
To truly grasp the systemic pressures causing this reset, we have to look at the numbers. And we're facing a pretty staggering demographic reality right now. Only 15% of the youth population in heavily bureaucratic systems are truly emancipated, while a massive 85% remain dependent. I mean, why? Because the math simply no longer works. You've got skyrocketing housing costs that can absorb over half of a median salary, combined with totally stagnant real wages. That structurally traps the younger generation in a perpetual state of dependency. They are completely locked out of acquiring the assets that previous generations used to build wealth.
And this brilliantly illustrates a concept sociologists refer to as a rat utopia. Picture this, an environment where you have relative material abundance, like there's cheap digital entertainment, cheap food, basic shelter. But the actual pathways to real social status, property ownership, and family formation are completely blocked. So what's the result? It leads to this total loss of demographic and economic energy. The youth recognize that extreme effort no longer guarantees a dignified life, and that leads to widespread societal apathy, a massive decline in birth rates, and that whole quiet quitting or lying flat phenomenon we've been seeing everywhere.
Now, when a bureaucratic state loses its economic vitality and demographic energy, it doesn't just throw its hands up and give up. It changes its management style. Historically, this progression of state control follows a very distinct pattern. Decades ago, systems actually operated on consent, governing through shared prosperity and open democracy. Then, in more recent years, as resources dwindled, systems moved to deception, using inflation, debt, and intense narrative control to kind of mask the economic reality. And finally, as the system approaches the game reset, it shifts straight into coercion, implementing strict regulations and heavy surveillance, just to manage the growing scarcity and internal friction.
Which brings us to our first major shift, the era of digital coercion. Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is how, as physical resources like housing and energy become genuinely scarce, centralized powers are leveraging high-tech frameworks to maintain order and manage behavior. These technological tools are forming a sort of digital panopticon. Believe it or not, over 100 countries are currently exploring or implementing central bank digital currencies right now. And this isn't just a simple tech upgrade. We're talking about programmable money and digital IDs that act as a matrix to manage scarcity. If the system needs to restrict your consumption, well, programmable money lets them do it instantly. And pay close attention to the justification here. These mechanisms are almost always presented to the public under the guise of protection, safety, and security.
In this kind of high-pressure environment, society basically splits into two distinct mindsets. On one side, you have the dependent consumer, often referred to as the NPC.
This individual is atomized, relies entirely on bureaucratic authority, and basically seeks out cheap digital dopamine to cope with their lack of real-world status. But contrasted against that is the sovereign player. This is a high-agency, high-energy individual who actually recognizes the game reset. Instead of just complaining about the broken system, they are fiercely focused on independence, tribal cohesion, and actively building their own parallel systems.
So let's look at how they do that. Section 2. The sovereign framework and building parallel network states.
To actually become that high-agency player, you need a rock-solid foundation. And the foundational concept of this whole sovereign framework is a historical principle known as asabiya. This essentially translates to extreme tribal cohesion and synchronicity within a very high-trust micro-community. Think about it. In a macro society where trust in huge political institutions has basically collapsed, your absolute greatest defense is forming a tight-knit tribe of maybe 5 to 10 highly capable, high-energy individuals. This micro-community operates entirely outside of traditional state structures, relying on a strict code of mutual sacrifice, honor, and deeply shared economic goals.
So the crucial point is that constructing this personal, parallel ecosystem requires you to master specific skills across 3 main domains. Mentally, you need game theory and mythopoesis. That's the ability to craft your own independent narratives and actually predict system movements. Socially, like we just discussed, you need that asabiya to build your high-trust network. And economically, you must master alchemical finance. This means pivoting away from easily inflated fiat currency and instead leveraging decentralized crypto assets or building micro-industries that produce real, undeniable market value that the bureaucratic state literally cannot dilute.
Furthermore, the true sovereign individual views technology completely differently. It is not a tool for submission. It is a massive weapon for leverage. While the state might use AI for surveillance, the sovereign uses AI as a personalized, automated workforce. By mastering AI agents, one single individual can replicate the output of an entire corporate department. We're talking automating code, copy, and sales. When you combine that incredible leverage with decentralized financial tools that operate entirely outside of state control, you effectively escape the bureaucratic matrix altogether. You are transacting directly on a global scale. Let's move to our final segment, Section 3, Escaping the Matrix with Actionable Next Steps.
Let's see how this all builds together into a real, actionable plan. Achieving sovereignty happens across 3 distinct phases. Step 1 is to deprogram. You absolutely must reject the cheap digital dopamine, all those algorithmic feeds designed to keep you a passive consumer. You have to regain your mental energy first. Step 2 is to accumulate. This means mastering high-income skills like AI implementation and decentralized finance. You are essentially building your own economic lifeboat. And finally, step 3 is to build. You take that reclaimed energy and capital, and you form those cohesive, high-trust micro-communities, your asabiya. That is what ensures you are completely insulated from the collapsing systems around you. Ultimately, the entire philosophy of navigating the game reset boils down to this incredibly powerful concept presented in our source material. The future is not something you wait for. It is what you imagine and fight for. In an era where centralized systems desperately want you to passively accept a diminished reality, true power lies in creation, not consumption. Your personal sovereignty is never going to be granted to you by some failing bureaucracy. It is something you have to actively construct for yourself. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question to consider today. Take a hard look at your daily habits, your financial structure, and your social circles. Ask yourself, are you building your own reality, or are you just comfortably living inside someone else's? The game reset is already here. It's happening right now. It's time to decide if you're going to be a passive consumer of the new rules or a sovereign architect of your own future. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and start building.